Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a world without the familiar comfort of a public library. No quiet aisles to wander. No endless shelves to browse. No friendly librarian to guide you. That world isn't some distant fantasy. It was the reality for most people just a few centuries ago. Let's travel back in time to the 18th century, a period of immense change, but one where knowledge was still a closely guarded treasure. In this era, books were not the everyday objects we know today. They were rare, precious items, symbols of wealth and status. Think of a grand manor house, late in the evening. The air is still, thick with the scent of beeswax and old paper. In a private study, lit by the flickering, gentle glow of a dozen candles, a gentleman sits in a high-backed chair. Before him, on a heavy oak desk, lies a book. Its cover is rich leather, perhaps embossed with gold leaf. The pages within are not mass-produced, but meticulously crafted. The text either hand-copied by a patient scribe or printed on a clunky, laborious press. This scene, this quiet moment of solitary reading, was a privilege. It was reserved for the landed gentry, the clergy, and the rising merchant class. For the vast majority of the population, the farmer in his field, the blacksmith at his forge, the shopkeeper in her store, the world of books was as distant as the moon. They might hear passages read aloud in church or listen to a story told by a traveler, but the idea of owning a book themselves, of holding one in their own hands, was almost unthinkable. These private libraries were the sanctuaries of the elite. They were rooms filled not just with books, but with ambition and influence. Here, ideas were debated, philosophies were formed, and the course of history was quietly shaped. The books themselves were often imported at great expense from London, Paris, or Leipzig, traveling across treacherous seas to reach their new owners. Each volume was a significant investment, costing as much as a skilled craftsman might earn in several weeks. The very act of collecting books was a declaration of one's place in the world. Imagine the feel of the paper, thicker and rougher than what we're used to. The unique, musty smell of the binding. The weight of the volume in your hands. These weren't just containers of information, they were artifacts. A single hand-copied manuscript could take months to complete, each letter a testament to human effort. To damage such an item would be a catastrophe. Knowledge was tangible, physical, and fragile. It was locked away in these candlelit rooms, accessible only to those who held the key. For the common person, stories and information were passed down orally. History was what your grandparents told you. News was what you heard in the marketplace or the tavern. The world was, for most, limited to the horizon they could see and the tales they were told. There was a deep and unbridgeable gulf between the literate few and the illiterate many. This wasn't just a gap in education. It was a gap in opportunity, in understanding, and in power. So, how did we get from that exclusive, locked-away world to the one we know today, where knowledge is, in theory, available to everyone? How did the idea of a library for the public or radical, almost revolutionary concept take root and blossom? The journey from the private study to the public shelf is a fascinating story of visionaries, philanthropists, and the unquenchable human thirst for knowledge. It's a story about the belief that everyone, regardless of their station in life, deserves the chance to learn, to dream, and to discover the world through the written word. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, deliberate process, built on the shoulders of individuals who dared to imagine a different future. They envisioned a world where the light of knowledge was unconfined to the drawing rooms of the rich, but could shine into every home and every mind. They believed in the power of shared information to build a better, more enlightened society. This is the story we are about to explore. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's a story that's incredibly close to my heart, and I'm excited to share it with you. If you're as fascinated by this as I am, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Your support means the world and allows me to keep making these videos. See you in the next one. Hello history lovers, and welcome back to our series. Today, we're journeying back to the bustling, cobblestone streets of early 18th century Boston to uncover the childhood of a true American icon, Benjamin. You might know him as a founding father, an inventor, a diplomat. But before all that, he was just a boy with an insatiable curiosity and a story that began in the most humble of circumstances. Picture this: Boston, 1706. It's a world of horse-drawn carts, flickering candlelight, and the constant hum of a growing colonial city. Into this world, on January 17th, Benjamin Franklin was born. Now, if you think your family is big, get this. Ben was the 15th of 17 children. His father, Josiah Franklin, was a candle maker and soap boiler, a trade that provided for his massive family but offered little in the way of luxury. They weren't wealthy or influential. They were a hard-working, God-fearing family trying to make their way in a new world. From his earliest days, young Ben was different. While other boys might have been content with games and mischief, Ben was utterly captivated by the written word. Books were expensive and rare, a luxury his family could barely afford. But that didn't stop him. He devoured every pamphlet, every almanac, every book he could get his hands on. His father had originally intended for him to join the clergy, recognizing his son's sharp mind and love for reading. Ben even spent a year at the Boston Latin School. However, the cost of a formal education was too steep for the Franklin family. So, at just 10 years old, Ben's formal schooling came to an end. He was pulled out to work in his father's shop, cutting wicks and melting tallow for candles. It was tedious, smelly work, and Ben hated it. He yearned for the sea, dreaming of a life of adventure. But his father, having already lost one son to the ocean, forbade it. Josiah, seeing his son's unhappiness, tried to find a trade that would suit Ben's intellectual nature. He took him to see various craftsmen at work, masons, joiners, braziers, hoping something would spark his interest. But Ben's true passion remained with books and ideas, and that's when a pivotal opportunity arose. Ben's older brother, James, returned from England and set up his own print shop in Boston. At the age of 12, Ben was officially apprenticed to his brother. This was a turning point. An apprenticeship was a legally binding contract, essentially making Ben his brother's servant until he turned 21. The work was demanding, but for a boy who loved to read, it was like being locked in a candy store. Suddenly, Ben was surrounded by words. He learned to set type, operate the printing press, and mix inks. More importantly, the print shop was a hub of information and debate. Authors, merchants, and thinkers came in and out, discussing the latest news and ideas from London and across the colonies. Ben was a quiet observer, soaking it all in like a sponge. Working in the print shop didn't just give him access to books. It gave him the desire to write. He wanted to contribute to the conversations he was overhearing. He began practicing his writing skills in secret, emulating the style of articles he read in a popular English magazine called The Spectator. He would read an article, jot down notes, then try to rewrite it from memory in his own words, comparing his version to the original to improve his vocabulary and structure. It was a rigorous, self-imposed education. But his brother James didn't exactly see him as a budding intellectual. To James, Ben was just his little brother, the apprentice. He probably wouldn't have taken Ben's literary ambitions seriously. So, Ben came up with a clever plan. He created a persona, a witty, middle-aged widow named Silence Doggett. Under this pen name, he began writing letters and essays filled with sharp observations and humorous critiques of Boston society, covering everything from fashion to religion. He would slip these letters under the door of the print shop at night. James and his friends would find them in the morning, read them, and be thoroughly impressed. They loved the wit and wisdom of Mrs. Dogood, and eagerly published her letters in their newspaper, the New England Courant. The Silence Dogood letters became incredibly popular, and everyone in town was talking about this mysterious, clever writer. Ben, just a teenager, reveled in the secret, listening as people praised his work, completely unaware that the author was the young apprentice right there in the shop. Eventually, Ben confessed, and while James's friends were amused, James himself was not. He was angry that his younger brother had upstaged him and gained so much acclaim. The relationship between the two brothers, already strained by James's often harsh treatment of his apprentice, grew even more tense. The print shop became a place of conflict, with the brothers frequently arguing. This conflict planted a seed in Ben's mind, a desire for freedom. He was learning a valuable trade, honing his mind, and discovering his own voice. But he was doing it all under the thumb of a domineering brother. He longed to be his own master, to make his own way in the world. The boy who was born into a crowded house, who hated the smell of melting tallow, and who found his calling amidst ink and lead type, was now dreaming of a future beyond his brother's shop and the familiar streets of Boston. That dream, as we will see, would lead him on an audacious journey, setting the stage for the remarkable life that lay ahead. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Benjamin Franklin's early years. It's amazing to see how the seeds of greatness were sown in such humble beginnings. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in our series. See you next time. Welcome back to our series on the life of Benjamin Franklin. If you missed the last part, be sure to check it out. Today, we're diving into one of the most pivotal moments of his life: the journey to Philadelphia. Imagine this. You're just 17 years old. You've left everything you've ever known behind, and you're setting out with barely a penny to your name. That was Benjamin Franklin in 1723. He had just broken his apprenticeship contract with his brother in Boston, a risky move that essentially made him a fugitive from the law in that colony. But Franklin wasn't one to be held back. He saw a world of opportunity waiting for him, and he was determined to find it. His first stop wasn't Philadelphia, but New York. He sold some of his books to fund the trip and boarded a sloop, hoping to find work as a printer. But fate had other plans. The printing trade in New York was already saturated, with the city's one printer having all the help he needed. He was advised to try his luck in Philadelphia, where a new printing house was rumored to be starting. So, with that sliver of hope, Franklin began the next leg of his arduous journey. This wasn't a comfortable trip. He embarked on a rough journey by boat across the bay to Amboy, New Jersey. A sudden squall hit, tearing the boat's sails and leaving them at the mercy of the waves for 30 long hours. Without food or water, drenched and exhausted, he finally made it to shore. From there, he had to walk 50 miles across New Jersey to Burlington, a journey that took several days. He was a lonely figure, trudging through the rain, his pockets nearly empty, his clothes muddy and worn. It was a test of his resilience, a true trial by fire for the young man. Finally, after another boat ride down the Delaware River, a weary and disheveled Franklin arrived in Philadelphia on a Sunday morning. He describes his own appearance with great humility. His pockets were stuffed with spare shirts and stockings. He was tired, dirty, and very hungry. He had only a Dutch dollar and about a shilling in copper. His first act in the city that would become his home was 2x3 large, puffy rolls from a baker. With a roll under each arm and eating the third, he walked up Market Street, a comical and slightly absurd sight. He passed the home of his future wife, Deborah Reed, who stood at her door and couldn't help but laugh at the awkward, hungry boy making his way through the city. Little did she know she was looking at her future husband and one of America's greatest figures. This famous scene, often retold, perfectly captures the essence of Franklin's beginnings. He wasn't born into privilege or power. He arrived as a nobody, a runaway apprentice with nothing but his own wit and an unshakable determination. He was the embodiment of the self-made man, long before the term was even popular. So, what kind of city had he arrived in? Philadelphia in the 1720s was a bustling port, the largest city in the American colonies, and growing rapidly. It was a hub of commerce and trade, a melting pot of different cultures and ideas, founded on Quaker principles of tolerance and hard work. It was a place where a person's success was judged not by their family name, but by their industry and virtue. For a young man like Franklin, brimming with ambition, it was the perfect environment. However, while Philadelphia was thriving commercially, it lacked a certain intellectual and cultural infrastructure. There were no public libraries, no established scientific societies, no institutions for higher learning beyond basic schooling. It was a city of practical, hard-working people. But the avenues for intellectual debate and organized self-improvement were few and far between. Franklin saw this not as a drawback, but as an opportunity. He saw a blank canvas on which he could paint his vision for a more enlightened, educated, and civically engaged society. His first days were spent finding lodging and, most importantly, work. He quickly found employment with a printer named Samuel Keimer, a rather eccentric character who would become both a rival and an associate. Franklin's skill and work ethic immediately set him apart. He wasn't just a typesetter. He was an innovator, constantly looking for ways to improve the printing process and the quality of the final product. He was resourceful, even making his own ink and casting his own type when necessary. It was during this early period in Philadelphia that Franklin began to form the habits and philosophies that would guide him for the rest of his life. He famously laid out a bold and arduous project of arriving at moral perfection, creating a list of 13 virtues, including temperance, order, and industry, which he would track and practice daily. This systematic approach to self-improvement was revolutionary. He treated his own character like a scientific experiment, something to be observed, measured, and improved upon. This journey from a runaway apprentice in Boston to a determined young printer in Philadelphia is more than just a chapter in Franklin S.'s life. It's the foundational story of the American dream. It's a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of hard work, and the idea that anyone, regardless of their origins, can achieve greatness through their own efforts. Franklin's arrival in Philadelphia, munching on a bread roll, wasn't just the start of his own legendary career. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the city itself, a chapter he would largely write. He didn't just find his fortune in Philadelphia. He helped to forge the city's very character, shaping it into the intellectual and political heart of a new nation. His story reminds us that our starting point doesn't define our destination. The challenges we face on our journey, the storms, the long walks in the rain, the empty pockets are often the very things that build the strength and character we need to succeed. Franklin's journey to Philadelphia was tough, but it forged the man who would go on to change the world. We've only just scratched the surface of Franklin's incredible impact on Philadelphia and the world. In our next video, we'll explore how he went from a humble printer to a civic leader, founding institutions that still exist today. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the life of Benjamin Franklin. If you're just joining us, make sure to catch up on the previous chapters. Today, we're diving into Chapter 4. A City of Thinkers. Picture this. Philadelphia in the early 18th century. It's a bustling, growing city, a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and ambitions. For a young, insatiably curious man like Benjamin Franklin, it was the perfect playground for his mind. He wasn't just here to make a living as a printer. He was here to learn, to grow, and to connect. Franklin quickly realized he wasn't alone in his hunger for knowledge. In the taverns, print shops, and coffee houses, he started to find others like him, merchants and clerks, who despite their long workdays, possessed a burning desire to understand the world around them. These weren't men born into academic privilege. They were self-made individuals, driven by an innate curiosity that formal education hadn't managed to extinguish. He began to seek them out, engaging in lively debates and discussions wherever he could find them. Franklin had a natural talent for bringing people together. He understood that while individual study was valuable, collective inquiry was powerful. He saw the potential for a community built not on wealth or status, but on a shared passion for intellectual exploration. Among his earliest and most important connections was a group of young men who would become his intellectual comrades. There was Joseph Brightnell, a scrivener with a love for poetry and natural history. There was Thomas Godfrey, a brilliant but humble glazier, who was a self-taught mathematician, eventually inventing an improved quadrant for navigation. And there were others, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to the table. What drew them to Franklin, and to each other, was a shared belief that knowledge wasn't just an abstract pursuit. It was a practical tool for self-improvement and, more importantly, for the betterment of society. They weren't interested in dusty old arguments for their own sake. They wanted to discuss science, philosophy, morality, and politics with a clear goal: to make their lives, and the life of their city, better. This informal network of friends was the seed from which something much larger would grow. Franklin, with his characteristic energy and organizational genius, saw an opportunity to formalize these casual gatherings. He proposed creating a club, a society of mutual improvement, where members could pool their knowledge, challenge each other's ideas, and work together on projects for the public good. And so, in 1727, the Junto was born. also known as the Leather Apron Club, a nod to its members' working-class roots. This group was Franklin's first great experiment in civic organization. The members, a dozen in total, met every Friday evening. Their rules, drafted by Franklin, were designed to foster open, respectful, and productive debate. Each meeting began with a series of 24 standing queries, which Franklin had meticulously crafted. Questions like, "Hath any citizen in your knowledge failed in his business lately? And what have you heard of the cause? Or do you know of any deserving young beginner lately set up, to whom it lies in the power of the Junto to be serviceable?" These weren't just idle chatter. They were a structured way to gather information, share business intelligence, and practice a form of communal support. After the standing queries, a member would present an essay they had written on a topic of their choosing, be it morals, politics, or natural philosophy. This was followed by a full-blown debate to prevent arguments from getting too heated. Franklin instituted a rule that all arguments had to be framed as a modest inquiry rather than a confrontational assertion. This promoted a spirit of collaborative discovery rather than adversarial conflict. The Junto was more than just a debate club. It was an intellectual incubator. The members' library books were pooled to create a common collection, a precursor to Franklin's later idea for the first subscription library in America. They discussed the latest scientific discoveries from Europe, debated philosophical concepts from Locke and Newton, and brainstormed practical solutions to local problems. Think about the sheer energy in that room. A group of ambitious, intelligent young men, free from the rigid structures of the old world, coming together to essentially redesign their society from the ground up. They were questioning everything, from the nature of virtue to the best way to pave a street or prevent fires. This was the Enlightenment in action, not in the salons of Paris, but in a rented room in Philadelphia. Among men who worked with their hands, through the Junto, Franklin was not only expanding his own knowledge, but also honing his skills as a leader, a writer, and a community organizer. He was building a network of allies who would support his future endeavors, both in business and in public life. The club became a powerful force for progress in Philadelphia. Its members went on to establish a host of civic institutions that we'll explore in future chapters, including the city's first volunteer fire department, a public hospital, and the University of Pennsylvania. The formation of the Junto marks a pivotal moment in Franklin's life and in the history of Philadelphia. It was the moment a collection of individual thinkers transformed into a cohesive intellectual community. It established a culture of inquiry, civic-mindedness, and practical problem-solving that would come to define the city. Franklin had successfully created a space where people like him, people who craved knowledge and progress, could come together, share their light, and, in doing so, illuminate the path forward for everyone. This city of thinkers was no accident. It was the deliberate creation of a young man who understood that the greatest resource a city has is the collective intelligence and goodwill of its citizens. By nurturing that resource, Franklin laid the foundation not just for his own incredible career, but for the flourishing of a truly American identity. That's all for this chapter. What a fascinating look at the power of community and shared knowledge. Join us next time as we see how Franklin takes these ideas from the meeting room of the Junto and brings them to the wider world. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single chapter of this amazing story. Thanks for watching, and see you soon. Have you ever had a group of friends where you just clicked? A circle where you could talk about anything and everything, from the mysteries of the universe to the latest gossip? Well, Benjamin Franklin had one of those, and it wasn't just for fun. It changed the world. This is the story of the Junto Club. Let's rewind to 1727. Franklin is back in Philadelphia, a bustling, ambitious young man of just 21. He's running his own printing shop, but his mind is fizzing with ideas that go far beyond ink and paper. He realizes that success isn't a solo journey. You need a team, a network, a group of like-minded individuals to bounce ideas off of, challenge your assumptions, and push you to be better. He craved intellectual sparring partners. So, he did what any good community builder does. He created one. He gathered a select group of friends and acquaintances, about a dozen in total, and formed a club. He called it the Junto, which comes from the Spanish word junta, meaning a group or a council. It was also affectionately known as the Leather Apron Club, a nod to the fact that most of its members were hardworking artisans and tradesmen, the backbone of colonial society. This wasn't some exclusive, high society, gentlemen's club. The members were people like Franklin himself, a shoemaker, a carpenter, a surveyor, a glazier, and other merchants and clerks. What united them wasn't wealth or status, but a powerful, shared trait, an insatiable curiosity. They were all self-starters, eager to improve themselves and their community. They believed in the power of knowledge and hard work. Every Friday evening, the junto would meet, usually at a local tavern. The atmosphere was informal, but structured. Franklin, ever the organizer, laid out a set of rules and a specific ritual for their discussions to ensure they were productive and respectful. Before each meeting, every member was expected to prepare by considering a list of 24 queries that Franklin had devised. These weren't simple yes or no questions. They were designed to spark deep thought and conversation. Questions like, hath a citizen in your knowledge failed in his business lately? And what have you heard of the cause? This wasn't for gossip. It was to learn from others' mistakes and understand the local economy. Another was, do you know of any deserving young beginner lately set up, to whom it lies in the power of the junto to be serviceable? This was about mutual support, about lifting each other up. It was networking, colonial style, but with a genuine desire to help. The queries covered everything: business, morality, philosophy, science, and local news. Have you or any of your acquaintance been lately sick or wounded? If so, what remedies were used, and what were their effects? This was early-stage citizen science and a way to share practical medical knowledge. Do you think of anything at present in which the junto may be serviceable to mankind, to their country, to their friends, or to themselves? This was the big one. It was the club's mission statement, a constant reminder that their purpose was bigger than just themselves. The meetings themselves were a fascinating mix of debate and collaboration. They'd start with a member reading an essay they had written on a topic of their choice. Then, the floor would open up for a structured debate. Franklin insisted on a spirit of sincere inquiry, not confrontational argument. The goal wasn't to win, but to arrive at the truth together. He discouraged using definitive words like certainly or undoubtedly. Instead, he encouraged members to preface their opinions with phrases like, I conceive, I should think it so, or it appears to me at present. This subtle shift in language fostered humility and kept minds open. It was a masterclass in effective communication. The junto was more than just a talking shop. It was an incubator for ideas that would transform Philadelphia. Think of it as a 1_8th century startup accelerator. It was within these Friday night discussions that the seeds for some of Franklin's most famous civic projects were sown. The idea for a volunteer fire department, discussed in the Junto. The creation of a city watch or police force, debated by the Leather Apron Club. The concept for a public hospital, thrashed out amongst these friends. But as their intellectual appetites grew, they ran into a very practical problem. Two of informed debates. They needed access to information. They needed books, and in the 1720s, books were incredibly expensive. They were luxury items, imported from England and priced far beyond the reach of a typical artisan or clerk. A single book could cost as much as a week's wages. Each member of the junto had their own small collection of books, and they would often bring them to meetings to share and reference. But this was inefficient. If a member wanted to borrow a book, they'd have to track down the owner. Sometimes books got lost or damaged. It was a logistical headache. Franklin saw this clearly. The club's thirst for knowledge was being held back by a simple lack of resources. The problem was clear. Individual book ownership was too costly and impractical for the group's needs. How could they create a shared pool of knowledge that was accessible and affordable for everyone? How could they scale their personal libraries into a collective brain? This challenge, born directly from the needs of his beloved Junto Club, sparked one of Franklin's most brilliant and enduring ideas, an idea that would democratize knowledge not just for his friends but for people across America and eventually the world. The solution he devised would become the very first subscription library, a direct ancestor of the public library system we all enjoy today. But that's a story for our next chapter. The Junto Club demonstrates a powerful truth. Great things happen when curious people get together to share ideas. It shows that you don't need to be rich or powerful to make a difference. All you need is a group of dedicated friends, a willingness to learn, and a desire to make your corner of the world a little bit better. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this journey through the life of Benjamin Franklin, do me a favor and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode, where we explore the birth of the public library. See you then. Hey everyone, welcome back to our journey through the life and mind of one of history's greatest innovators. Last time, we left the Junto Club buzzing with intellectual energy, a group of ambitious young men hungry for knowledge. But there was a problem, a big one. How could a group of artisans and tradesmen, with limited means, possibly get their hands on enough books to satisfy their curiosity? Entonces books were expensive, a luxury reserved for the wealthy elite. Owning a personal library was a dream far out of reach for most. But for our friend Franklin, a problem was never a dead end. It was just a puzzle waiting to be solved. This brings us to Chapter 6, The Birth of a Shared Idea. Picture the scene. The Junto members are gathered, perhaps in a cozy tavern, the air thick with the aroma of wood smoke and ale. They've just finished a lively debate, but the conversation hits a familiar wall. Someone mentions a book they wish they could read to settle an argument. Another laments the cost of a new scientific text. The frustration is palpable. They have the desire, the drive, but not the resources. It's a classic roadblock that could have easily fizzled out their ambitious club. But then, Franklin, ever the practical visionary, speaks up. He looks around at his friends, these bright, eager minds, and sees not a collection of individuals, but a collective force. He tables a proposal, one so simply yet so profoundly radical for its time. He says, what if we stop thinking about what each of us can afford, and start thinking about what we can achieve together? What if, instead of each man struggling to buy a book or two, we pool our money? The idea starts to take shape. Franklin suggests that each member contribute a small amount of money, a subscription fee. It wouldn't be a fortune for any single person, but when combined, it would create a respectable fund. And what would they do with this fund? They would use it to purchase books. Not for one person, not for Franklin, but for everyone. The books would belong to the group, held in common for the benefit of all. This was the birth of their shared library. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just about sharing books. It was a fundamental shift in perspective. Franklin was proposing that knowledge shouldn't be a private luxury, hoarded by the rich and powerful. Instead, it could be a collective treasure, accessible to anyone with the desire to learn, regardless of their station in life. He envisioned a common stock of knowledge that would enrich not just the individual, but the entire community. Imagine the reaction in the room. At first, maybe some skepticism. Our own library? Can we really do that? But as Franklin lays out the logic, the sheer common sense of it, excitement starts to build. The members realize he's not just talking about saving money. He is offering them a key to unlock a world of ideas that have previously been barred to them. He was, in effect, democratizing knowledge. The power of a single well-stocked library, available to all of them, would be far greater than the sum of their scattered, personal collections. This idea was nothing short of revolutionary. It was a practical application of the very principles that Junto stood for. Mutual improvement and community betterment. By pooling their resources, they weren't just buying books. They were investing in themselves and in each other. Each member's small contribution would multiply in value, granting them access to a wealth of information they could never have acquired alone. It was a system where everyone put in a little and got back a lot. This concept, which seems so obvious to us today with our public libraries on every corner, was a groundbreaking innovation in the 1730s. It challenged the old-world idea that education and intellectual pursuits were the exclusive domain of the aristocracy and clergy. Franklin was demonstrating that ordinary people, through cooperation and ingenuity, could create their own institutions for learning and self-improvement. He was building the infrastructure for a more informed, more engaged citizenry from the ground up. The initial plan was straightforward. They would collect the subscription fees, create a list of desired books covering a range of subjects from science and history to poetry and philosophy, and then purchase them. The books would be kept in a central location, likely the room where the Junto met, and members could borrow them, read them, and bring the new ideas back to the group for discussion. It was a perfect, self-sustaining cycle of learning. This wasn't just about reading. It was about creating a shared intellectual space. The library would become the heart of the Junto, the fuel for their debates, and the foundation for their projects. It transformed them from a simple discussion club into a true learning cooperative. The shared books created a shared context, a common ground of knowledge that made their conversations richer and more productive. They were now all, quite literally, on the same page. Think about the impact this had on each member. A young carpenter could now study architecture. A clerk could read the latest works of philosophy. A surveyor could learn about new mathematical techniques. The shared library was an engine of social and intellectual mobility. It empowered these men to expand their horizons, improve their trades, and become more well-rounded, capable individuals. Franklin understood that an educated populace was the bedrock of a healthy society. And so, this simple, brilliant idea born out of a practical need was set in motion. It was a testament to Franklin's genius for taking a lofty ideal, like the pursuit of knowledge, and grounding it in a practical, achievable plan. He didn't just dream of a better world. He built it. One book, one shared idea at a time. This small subscription library, started by a group of young tradesmen in Philadelphia, would become the seed from which a vast forest of public knowledge would grow across America and the world. It all started here, in this chapter of Franklin's life, with the simple, powerful realization that when we share our resources, we multiply our strengths. It is a lesson that is just as relevant and powerful today as it was nearly 300 years ago. Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive. The story of what happens next, how this small idea grew into a major institution, is just as fascinating. If you're enjoying this series and want to see where the story goes, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Your support means the world and helps us keep creating this content. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Benjamin Franklin. Today, we're jumping into a chapter that truly changed the landscape of knowledge in America. We'll be talking about the year 1731 and the birth of a revolutionary idea, the Library Company of Philadelphia. Now, imagine it's the early 18th century in the American colonies. If you weren't wealthy or a part of the clergy, access to books was incredibly limited. Books were expensive, a luxury few could afford. For a young, ambitious printer like Benjamin Franklin, who had an insatiable thirst for knowledge, this was a major roadblock. He believed that for a society to prosper, its citizens needed access to information, to ideas, and to the great thinkers of the past and present. Franklin had already started a club called the Junto, a group of like-minded artisans and tradesmen who gathered to discuss everything from philosophy to business. Each member had a small collection of books, and they'd often bring them to meetings to share and reference during their debates. But this was inefficient. As Franklin himself noted, it was inconvenient to lug books back and forth, and there was always the risk of them getting damaged. There had to be a better way. This practical problem sparked one of Franklin's most enduring and impactful ideas. What if they pooled their resources? What if, instead of each person buying a few books for themselves, they combined their money to buy a much larger collection that everyone could share? This was the seed that would grow into the Library Company of Philadelphia. So, on July 1st, 1731, the formal proposal was made. Franklin and his fellow Junto members set out to create America's very first subscription library. It was a simple yet brilliant concept. Each founding member would contribute an initial sum of money to purchase the first set of books, and then pay annual dues to maintain and expand the collection. This wasn't a library for the elite. It was a library for the working man, the tradesman, the curious citizen. The initial subscription was set at 40 shillings per person, with annual dues of 10 shillings. Think of it as the 18th century version of a Netflix or a Spotify subscription. But for books, this fee made membership accessible to a much broader range of people than ever before. For the first time, a regular person could gain access to a world of knowledge that had previously been locked away in private, aristocratic collections. Franklin, being the meticulous organizer that he was, didn't just have the idea. He saw it through to execution. He personally drafted the library's charter, the formal articles of agreement that laid out the rules and purpose of the institution. He also penned the borrowing rules, ensuring the system was fair and the precious collection was well. His proposal stated the library's goal was for the advancement of knowledge and useful arts in Philadelphia. Getting the initial 50 subscribers to sign up wasn't easy. Franklin had to use all his powers of persuasion. He went door to door, so to speak, convincing his peers of the immense value this shared resource would bring not only to them personally but to the community as a whole. He argued that access to books on history, science, and philosophy would make them better tradesmen, better citizens, and better people. Once the funds were collected, the next challenge was actually acquiring the books. There were no major publishers in the colonies, so the first order had to be sent all the way to London. Imagine the anticipation. The members carefully compiled a list of titles they wanted, covering a wide range of subjects. It included works on science by Isaac Newton, philosophy by John Locke, and history, as well as practical manuals on agriculture and architecture. This wasn't just about reading for pleasure. It was about practical self-improvement and civic engagement. When the first shipment of books finally arrived in Philadelphia, it was a momentous occasion. The collection was initially housed in a small, rented room. Members could come and borrow books, taking them home to study at their own pace. This was a radical departure from the few other libraries that existed at the time, which were mostly associated with universities or religious institutions, and were not open to the public for borrowing. The impact was immediate and profound. The library company became a hub of intellectual activity in the city. It was more than just a place to get books. It was a community center for the mind. The knowledge contained within its collection fueled conversations, inspired new inventions, and helped shape the political discourse of the era. Franklin himself called it the mother of all North American subscription libraries, and he wasn't exaggerating. The model was so successful that it was soon copied in other towns and cities across the colonies. Franklin's idea democratized information. It fostered a culture of learning and intellectual curiosity among the general populace, which was a critical ingredient in the stew that would eventually lead to the American Revolution. An informed citizenry, capable of critical thought and reasoned debate, was being forged in the reading rooms of these new libraries. The Library Company of Philadelphia still exists today, a living testament to Franklin's vision. It stands as the oldest cultural institution in the United States and holds an incredible collection of rare books and manuscripts. To think that it all started with a group of young tradesmen, led by a visionary printer, who simply wanted to read more books, is truly inspiring. It shows that great institutions can grow from the simplest of ideas, especially when that idea is about sharing knowledge and empowering people. This venture perfectly encapsulates Franklin's practical and civic-minded genius. Essaouanid devised an elegant and cooperative solution, and worked tirelessly to make it a reality. He understood that knowledge wasn't a resource to be hoarded, but one that grows in value the more it is shared. The Library Company of Philadelphia is one of his greatest gifts to America, a foundational pillar of its intellectual and democratic heritage. Thanks so much for watching. This piece of history is so important because it reminds us of the power of community and the importance of accessible information. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next chapter. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. We'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. We've journeyed through the inception of an idea, the gathering of minds, and the pooling of resources. Today, we stand on the precipice of a monumental event, a moment that will forever change the course of our story. This is Chapter 8, the first books. Imagine the scene. A crisp morning, the air buzzing not just with the chill, but with an electric sense of anticipation. 4 weeks. Whispers had turned into excited chatter. The funds had been sent across the vast Atlantic to London, a city teeming with the world's greatest thinkers and writers. And now, the fruits of that investment were about to arrive. The dock is a flurry of activity, but for our library members, all focus is on one particular vessel, newly arrived from England. Crate after heavy wooden crate is carefully unloaded, each one marked with the name of our burgeoning institution. You can almost feel the collective breath being held. What wonders, what worlds are contained within these simple wooden boxers. This isn't just cargo, it's the physical manifestation of a dream, a tangible link to a world of knowledge they had only dared to imagine. The journey of these books across the ocean was perilous, a testament to the dedication of everyone involved. Now, safely on shore, their next journey is about to begin, the journey into the minds and hearts of a community, hungry for knowledge. As the crates are pried open, a hush falls over the crowd. The scent of fresh paper, ink, and leather binding fills the air, a perfume more precious than any French fragrance. This is the smell of progress, of enlightenment. The members gather around, their eyes wide with a mixture of reverence and pure, unadulterated joy. For many, this is the first time they have ever seen such a collection of brand new books, crisp and untouched. It's a treasure chest, but instead of gold and jewels, it holds something far more valuable. Ideas. The very first book is lifted from its stroke-back nest. What is it? A work of natural philosophy, perhaps. A treatise on government. The title doesn't even matter at this initial moment. What matters is that it's asterisk. Here asterisk. It's real. The library is no longer just a concept. It's a living, breathing entity. One by one, the books are revealed, each one drawing gasps and murmurs of appreciation. The range is staggering, a deliberate and carefully curated selection designed to cater to a wide array of interests and to build a foundational base of knowledge for the community. Here's a volume on astronomy, its pages filled with charts of the cosmos, promising to unlock the secrets of the stars. It has a bold declaration that our gaze should not be limited to the ground beneath our feet, but should extend to the heavens above. Next to it, a book on botany, detailing the flora of both the old world and the new, offering a scientific lens through which to view the very plants growing in their own backyards. This isn't just about reading. It's about understanding the world in a more profound and intricate way. The collection is a testament to the intellectual curiosity of the age. We see works of philosophy, the great thinkers of the Enlightenment, Rousseau, Voltaire, their revolutionary ideas on liberty, society, and human rights now accessible to anyone with a library membership. Imagined debates and discussions these texts will ignite. This is the fuel for a fire of intellectual discourse that will warm the community for years to come. Then there are the histories, detailed accounts of the Roman Empire, the chronicles of English kings, and stories of civilizations both ancient and modern. These books offer perspective, a sense of place in the long, unfolding story of humanity. They teach that the present is built upon the foundations of the past, and that by understanding history, we can better shape our future. And it doesn't stop there. The law is represented with volumes on jurisprudence and legal theory, providing the intellectual tools necessary for building a just and orderly society. There are books on mathematics, on medicine, on architecture. The collection is a veritable encyclopedia of human achievement. But it's not all dense, academic texts. Tucked among the philosophies and sciences are works of poetry and drama, the plays of Shakespeare, the verses of Milton. These are books that speak not just to the mind, but to the soul. They explore the depths of human emotion, the complexities of love and loss, tragedy and comedy. They remind us that to be learned is not just to be knowledgeable, but to be empathetic, to understand the vast and varied tapestry of the human experience. For the members, this is more than just exciting. It's transformative. A farmer can now read about new agricultural techniques that could double his crop yield. A young apprentice can study the principles of mechanics to improve his craft. A woman, perhaps with limited formal education, can now travel the world, debate with philosophers, and witness history unfold, all from the comfort of a reading chair. The library becomes a great equalizer, a place where station and wealth matter less than curiosity and the desire to learn. The arrival of these books represents the breaking down of barriers, the democratization of knowledge. It's a profoundly powerful moment, a quiet revolution taking place in a small town. Crate by a wooden crate. The sheer, palpable joy is the most memorable part of the day. People are carefully turning pages, their fingers tracing the lines of text as if to absorb the words through touch alone. Friends are calling out to each other from across the room. Look at this. Can you believe they sent a copy of Newton's Principia? Or here's a complete set of the Spectator essays. The room buzzes with an energy that is both intellectual and deeply personal. Each book is a promise of new skills, new perspectives, new conversations, and new dreams. This collection isn't just for the founding members. It's a legacy for their children and their children's children. It's an investment in the future, a declaration of faith in the power of knowledge to uplift and improve the human condition. As the day draws to a close and the last book is shelved, a new chapter truly begins. The physical library space, once just a room with empty shelves, is now filled with potential. It has a heart, a soul, comprised of the thousands of pages that now line its walls. The arrival of this first shipment from London is the climax of our story's first act, but it is also the beginning of everything else. Material work, and the real joy of reading, learning, and sharing is about to start. The treasure has been unearthed, and now the adventure of exploring it can finally commence. This wasn't just the day the books arrived, it was the day the future arrived. Thank you so much for joining us for this pivotal chapter in our story. It is moments like these that truly show the power of a community coming together with a shared vision. What book would you have been most excited to see in that first shipment? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this journey, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss what happens next. We're so grateful to have you with us. See you in the next chapter. Ever wonder how the very first subscription library actually functioned? It's a story of trust, community, and some surprisingly simple rules. Welcome back to our series. Today, in Chapter 9, we're pulling back the curtain on how Benjamin Franklin's Library Company of Philadelphia operated in its earliest days. It wasn't about fancy buildings or digital catalogs. It was about people and their shared love for books. The system was straightforward, yet revolutionary for its time. Once you became a member by paying your initial fee and annual dues, you gained borrowing privileges. Think of it as an all-access pass to the world of knowledge. Each member could check out a book, but the genius of the system lay in its communal spirit. The rules weren't just about borrowing for oneself. They were designed to encourage sharing. A member could take a book home, read it, and then pass it along to family, friends, or neighbors. This ripple effect meant a single book could enlighten dozens of minds, far beyond the official membership list. It turned every member into a mini-librarian, a distributor of ideas within their own social circles. This wasn't just about lending books. It was about weaving a network of knowledge throughout the city. So, where were all these precious books kept? You might be picturing grand, columned halls, but the reality was much more humble. In the beginning, the entire collection of the library company was stored in a single, rented room. That's right, a rented room. It was located in the home of one of their earliest librarians, Lise Timo. This small, unassuming space was the physical heart of this grand intellectual experiment. It was a testament to the idea that you do need a massive infrastructure to start something world-changing. All you need is a powerful idea, a dedicated group of people, and a small, safe place to store your treasures. This humble beginning is a powerful reminder that monumental institutions often start from the simplest of seeds. It was from this single room that the concept of the public library would grow and spread across the nation and the world. Let's dive a bit deeper into the logistics. When a member wanted a book, they would go to this room during designated hours. The librarian would be there to manage the collection. A ledger was kept, meticulously recording who borrowed which book and when it was due back. There were fines for late returns. Of course, this wasn't just to generate a little extra income. It was a crucial mechanism to ensure the books kept circulating. If one person held on to a popular title for too long, many others would miss out. The fines encouraged prompt returns and kept the collection flowing, maximizing its benefit to the entire community. It was a delicate balance between access and responsibility, a system built on mutual respect among the members. And what about the books themselves? The initial collection was carefully curated by the members, with Franklin playing a leading role. They pooled their money to purchase titles they believed would be most beneficial for self-improvement and public discourse. These weren't just novels for entertainment. They were works of history, philosophy, science, and practical arts. The goal was to create a useful collection. Each book was seen as a tool for personal and societal advancement. When a new shipment of books arrived from London, it was a major event. Members would gather excitedly to unbox the latest editions, eager to see what new worlds of thought were now at their fingertips. This shared excitement further solidified the bonds of the community. The role of the librarian was also key. It wasn't just a custodian's job. The librarian was often a well-read individual who could offer recommendations and help members navigate the collection. They were the gatekeepers and the guides to this new world of information. They managed the checkouts, collected the fines, and oversaw the physical condition of the books. In manuales, they were the operational engine that kept the entire system running smoothly. The trust placed in the librarian was immense, as they were responsible for the members' collective investment. It was a position of great honor and responsibility within the community. This system of shared ownership and responsibility was truly groundbreaking. Before this, access to large collections of books was a privilege reserved for the clergy or the very wealthy. Franklin's library democratized knowledge. It was founded on the principle that anyone, regardless of their station in life, could improve themselves through reading. By creating a system where a modest fee gave you access to a wealth of information, the library company empowered a new generation of thinkers, innovators, and leaders. It was a practical demonstration of the Enlightenment ideals that were sweeping through the colonies. Imagine the atmosphere in that small, rented room. It must have been buzzing with intellectual energy. It was a place where artisans, merchants, and thinkers could gather, not just to borrow books, but to discuss the ideas within them. It became a de facto social and intellectual hub. The library wasn't just a repository of silent books on shelves. It was a living, breathing center for conversation and debate. Friendships were forged, business ideas were born, and political theories were debated, all sparked by the shared resources of the library. This social dimension was just as important as the borrowing system itself. It proved that a library is more than just a collection of books. It's a community. So, to recap the brilliant simplicity of it all, members paid a fee for a share in the company. This money was used to buy books. These books were stored in a central, albeit humble, location. A librarian managed the collection, and a system of borrowing and fines ensured the books were shared widely and returned promptly. But the secret ingredient was the community itself, the shared purpose, the collective ownership, and the spirit of mutual improvement. It was a system built for the people, by the people. From that one small room, a revolution in access to information began, one that continues to shape our world today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the workings of the very first library. It's incredible how a simple, well-designed system can have such a profound and lasting impact. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters in our journey. We love having you as part of our community. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series. Today, we're diving into Chapter 10, a truly inspiring part of our story. The philosophy of shared knowledge. In a world now saturated with information at our fingertips, it's easy to take for granted the radical idea that knowledge should be for everyone. But for thinkers like Benjamin Franklin, this wasn't just a nice thought, it was a revolutionary principle, the very bedrock of a thriving society. Let's travel back to the 18th century. Education was, for the most part, a privilege reserved for the wealthy elite. If you were born into a poor family, your access to books and formal learning was severely limited, if not non-existent. This created a rigid social hierarchy, where power and influence were hoarded by a small, educated class. Franklin saw this as a fundamental flaw, a barrier to human progress, and a threat to the budding ideals of democracy. He passionately believed that education shouldn't be a luxury but a universal right. Why? Because he understood that knowledge is power. Not the power to dominate, but the power to improve oneself, to innovate, and to participate meaningfully in civic life. In his view, an informed citizenry was the ultimate defense against tyranny. If people could read, think critically, and debate ideas, they could govern themselves effectively. They could question authority, hold their leaders accountable, and contribute to the public good. Knowledge wasn't just about personal enrichment. It was the engine of a strong, resilient democracy. This philosophy wasn't just theoretical. Franklin put it into action. His most enduring legacy in this realm is the creation of the Library Company of Philadelphia in 1731. It wasn't the first library, but its model was groundbreaking. It was a subscription library, where members pooled their resources to purchase books that none of them could afford individually. This simple yet brilliant idea effectively democratized access to information. Imagine being a tradesperson, an artisan, or a clerk in colonial Philadelphia. Your days are long and your wages are modest. You have a thirst for knowledge. Learn about science, history, philosophy, or even just a new crafting technique, but books are incredibly expensive, a luxury far beyond your reach. Then, suddenly, for a small subscription fee, you gain access to a vast collection of books from around the world. The library becomes your gateway to new ideas, new skills, and new perspectives. This is precisely what happened. The library became a bustling hub of intellectual activity. It was more than just a quiet room filled with books. It was a vibrant community space where people from different walks of life could gather, share ideas, and engage in spirited debate. A blacksmith could discuss philosophy with a merchant. A printer could learn about the latest scientific discoveries. And a young apprentice could dream of a future beyond his current station. The library became a powerful social equalizer. It was here that the rigid class structures of the old world began to dissolve. In the world of ideas, your social standing didn't matter. What mattered was your curiosity, your intellect, and your willingness to learn. The library bridged the gap between the rich and the poor, not by redistributing wealth, but by distributing the tools for self-improvement and intellectual empowerment. It gave ordinary people the chance to expand their horizons and participate in the great conversations of their time. Franklin's vision extended beyond just one library. He saw this model as a blueprint for a more enlightened society. He believed that if communities across the colonies could establish similar institutions, it would create a network of informed citizens, all contributing to a stronger, more unified nation. And that's exactly what happened. The concept of the public library, a cornerstone of modern society, has its roots in this very philosophy. That shared knowledge builds stronger communities. This idea that learning can bridge social divides is as relevant today as it was in Franklin's time. Think about the role of public libraries, open access journals, and free online educational resources in our own lives. They are the modern-day inheritors of Franklin's legacy. They operate on the same fundamental principle, that when we make knowledge accessible to all, we empower individuals, we strengthen our communities, and we create a more just and equitable world. The library wasn't just a repository of books. It was a symbol of hope. It represented the belief that anyone, regardless of their background, could improve their lot in life through diligence and learning. It was a testament to the idea that a society is strongest when all its members are given the opportunity to reach their full potential. This was the core of Franklin's philosophy, a belief in the power of shared knowledge to lift up all of humanity. In a very real sense, the library was an investment in the future. By providing access to knowledge, Franklin and his fellow members were investing in the intellectual capital of their city and their nation. They understood that the discoveries, innovations, and great ideas of tomorrow would come from the curious minds they were nurturing today. They were planting seeds of knowledge that would blossom for generations to come. So, as we reflect on this chapter, let's remember the profound impact of this simple, yet powerful, idea. The free exchange of knowledge isn't just a convenience. It's a moral imperative. It's the foundation upon which free societies are built and sustained. Franklin's vision reminds us that when we tear down the walls that restrict access to learning, we unlock the boundless potential of the human spirit. Thank you so much for joining me today to explore this incredible chapter. It's a powerful reminder of the values that shape our world. If you found this discussion inspiring, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious. Hello and welcome back to our series. In our last chapter, we saw Benjamin Franklin and his Junto Club establish the Library Company of Philadelphia, a revolutionary idea that brought books into the hands of ordinary people. But what happened next? Did this brilliant spark simply flicker out in Philadelphia, or did it ignite a fire that would spread across the entire continent? Today, we're diving into Chapter 11, The Ripple Effect Across the Colonies. We'll explore how one successful experiment in civic improvement became a blueprint for a nation, transforming the intellectual landscape of colonial America forever. This isn't just a story about libraries. It's a story about the power of an idea to connect, educate, and inspire a generation on the cusp of defining itself. Imagine the news traveling in the 1730s and 40s. It wasn't instantaneous like today. It moved at the speed of a horse-drawn carriage or a ship sailing along the coast. Yet, word of the Library Company of Philadelphia spread like wildfire. Letters from merchants, articles in colonial newspapers, and travelers' tailies all carried the story of this unique institution. In cities and towns from Charleston to Boston, people were hearing about a place where tradesmen, artisans, and farmers could access the same knowledge previously reserved for the clergy or the wealthy elite. The concept was electrifying. It wasn't just about reading. It was about self-improvement, community, and the radical notion that anyone with a curious mind could better their station in life. The success of the Library Company was undeniable, and its structure was brilliantly simple and replicable. A group of citizens pools their money through subscriptions. They collectively decide on which books to purchase, and they create a shared resource for everyone involved. This model was incredibly appealing. It was democratic, it was self-funded, and it was managed by the community it served. Soon, prominent citizens in other colonies began to think, if they can do it in Philadelphia, why can't we do it here? The seed of inspiration had been planted, and it was beginning to take root in the fertile soil of colonial ambition. This wasn't just imitation, it was a shared movement, a collective awakening to the power of shared knowledge. The first ripples began to show up relatively quickly. In 1739, a similar subscription library was founded in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a testament to the idea's local influence. But the real testament to its power was its spread beyond Pennsylvania's borders. The Redwood Library and Athenaeum was established in Newport, Rhode Island, in 1747. Just a few years later, in 1754, the New York Society Library was founded, and the Charleston Library Society had already been established in South Carolina in 1748. Each of these institutions, while having its own unique local character, explicitly drew inspiration from Franklin's model in Philadelphia. They were a network of intellectual light, pushing back the darkness of ignorance, one subscription at a time. What's fascinating is how these libraries adapted to their local environments. In a bustling port city like Charleston, the library's collection might have a stronger focus on international trade, maritime law, and natural history relevant to the southern climate. In a more academic-leaning town, the focus might be heavier on classical literature, philosophy, and theology. This adaptability was key to the model's success. It wasn't a rigid, one-size-fits-all franchise. Instead, it was a flexible framework that empowered communities to build an institution that reflected their specific needs, interests, and aspirations. Each new library became a unique expression of its community's intellectual identity, all while being part of this larger, interconnected movement of public enlightenment. The impact of these libraries on colonial society cannot be overstated. They became vital community hubs. Imagine a young apprentice, after a long day of labor, heading to the library. There, he could read about the latest scientific discoveries from Europe, study architectural designs, or delve into political philosophy. This access to information was transformative. It leveled the playing field, allowing individuals from all walks of life to engage in the great conversations of their time. These weren't just quiet rooms filled with dusty books. They were dynamic centers of learning and debate, places where future leaders, innovators, and revolutionaries were quietly honing their minds. Beyond individual betterment, the libraries fostered a powerful sense of civic pride and collective enterprise. The act of founding and maintaining a library was a project that brought people together. It required cooperation, organization, and a shared belief in a common good. When a community successfully established a library, it was a tangible symbol of their sophistication, their commitment to progress, and their ability to work together for mutual improvement. This process of civic engagement was, in itself, a form of education. It taught colonists the practical skills of self-governance and collaboration, skills that would prove absolutely essential in the decades to come. The Library Company of Philadelphia didn't just become a model for other libraries. It became a model for civic improvement in general. Franklin and his peers realized that this collaborative, subscription-based model could be applied to solve other public problems. If they could pool their resources to buy books, could they also pool them to create a volunteer fire department, or to pave and light the city streets, or to establish a hospital for the poor? The answer, as Franklin would prove time and again, was a resounding yes. The library was the first proof of concept for a new way of thinking about community problems, not as issues to be solved by a distant government, but as challenges to be met by the collective will and resources of the citizens themselves. This shift in mindset was profound. It nurtured a spirit of proactive problem-solving and self-reliance that became a hallmark of the American character. The success of the library demonstrated that ordinary citizens, when organized and motivated, had the power to fundamentally shape and improve their own environment. It was a practical application of Enlightenment ideals, moving them from the pages of philosophical treatises into the streets and buildings of colonial towns. The ripple effect that started with a small group of tradesmen wanting to share books expanded to encompass public safety, public health, and public infrastructure, laying the groundwork for a truly civil society. As we look back, we can see the Library Company not as an isolated event, but as the first domino in a long and complex chain reaction. It sparked a colonial-wide library movement that democratized knowledge and created a more informed citizenry. This, in turn, fostered the skills and spirit of civic engagement that led to a host of other public works and improvements. This entire process cultivated a generation of Americans who were not only well-read but also experienced in the art of self-organization and community action. When the time came to debate the very nature of their relationship with Great Britain, they were ready. They had the intellectual tools, the civic vocabulary, and the practical experience to imagine and build something entirely new. A republic. The humble subscription library, born from a desire to share books, had become an unlikely cradle of revolution. Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of our journey. The story of how a simple idea can ripple outwards and change the world is truly inspiring. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue exploring this incredible history with us, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We love reading your thoughts, so please share your comments down below. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, and welcome back to our journey through the life of one of history's most fascinating figures. Today, in Chapter 12, we're diving deep into how Franklin's vision didn't just grow, it exploded, reshaping the very fabric of society around him. If you thought his early achievements were impressive, you're about to see how he took his passion for public good to a whole new level. Last time, we left off with Franklin establishing the first lending library, a revolutionary concept that democratized knowledge. But for a mind like Franklin's, that was just the beginning, not the destination. The success of the library wasn't just a win for book lovers. It was proof of a powerful idea that ordinary people, when they pooled their resources and energy, can achieve extraordinary things for the common good. This success ignited a fire in him, fueling a much grander vision. He began to see the library not as a standalone project, but as the first piece of a much larger puzzle blueprint for a better, more enlightened city. Franklin looked around Philadelphia and saw a city brimming with potential, but also rife with challenges. He saw the constant threat of fires, the lack of formal education for many, and the desperate need for organized healthcare. Where others saw problems, Franklin saw opportunities for innovation. He realized that the same collaborative model that made the library a success could be applied to solve these other pressing issues. His mind was a whirlwind of activity, connecting dots that no one else saw. He wasn't just thinking about a single institution anymore. He was thinking about a network of institutions, an entire ecosystem designed to uplift every single citizen. His first major target after the library was public safety. In those days, a house fire was often a death sentence for a building. Firefighting was a chaotic, disorganized affair, with competing volunteer groups who sometimes fought each other for payment before even tackling the blaze. Franklin saw this inefficiency as not just dangerous, but morally wrong. So, he penned another one of his famous essays, this time outlining the practical need for a unified, organized fire department. He didn't just propose the idea, he laid out a clear, actionable plan. He proposed the creation of the Union Fire Company, a volunteer group dedicated to mutual assistance. Each member pledged to bring their own buckets and equipment to any fire, working together under a structured system. It was a simple yet revolutionary idea, replacing competition with cooperation. The concept was so effective that it quickly caught on, and soon, numerous other fire companies were formed based on his model, creating a citywide safety net. With public safety improving, Franklin turned his attention to another cornerstone of a thriving society: education. He believed that a republic could only survive if its citizens were well-informed and virtuous. While his library provided access to knowledge, he envisioned a more structured system for the city's youth. He dreamed of an academy that would teach practical skills alongside classical subjects, preparing students not just for the clergy or law, but for lives as skilled artisans, merchants, and engaged citizens. This led to his proposal for what would eventually become the University of Pennsylvania. He argued that education should not be a luxury for the wealthy elite, but a tool for social mobility and public service. He wanted to create a place that would produce not just scholars, but duous people equipped with the knowledge and the moral compass to lead and innovate. But Franklin's vision of a complete society wasn't just about sharp minds and safe homes. It was also about caring for the vulnerable. He was deeply moved by the plight of the city's sick and poor, who often had nowhere to turn for medical care. At the time, hospitals as we know them were virtually non-existent in the colonies. The sick were cared for at home, and those without families or resources were often left to suffer in squalor. Franklin, alongside his friend Dr. Thomas Bond, championed the cause for a public hospital. He used his newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette, to build public support, writing powerful articles that appealed to both the compassion and the civic pride of his fellow Philadelphians. He launched a brilliant fundraising campaign, proposing a matching grant system where the colonial government would match private donations, a clever strategy that encouraged everyone to contribute. This effort culminated in the founding of the Pennsylvania Hospital, the first of its kind in America, a place dedicated to healing all people, regardless of their ability to pay. Do you see the pattern here? The fire department, the university, the hospital, they all stemmed from the same core principle Franklin had tested with his public library. This was his grand, unifying theory of social progress. It was a mission to build a society where people were not just surviving, but thriving. Each institution was a pillar supporting the others. Educated citizens could better govern themselves and innovate. A healthy populace was a productive populace. A city safe from disaster could focus its energy on growth and prosperity. The library, once a standalone project, had now become the foundational piece of this larger mission. It was the engine of enlightenment, providing the knowledge and shared understanding that made all the other advancements possible. Franklin's work shows us that true vision isn't about having one great idea. It's about seeing how multiple ideas connect to create something far greater. He was a systems thinker, a social architect who was building not just buildings, but a community. He understood that a library wasn't just a place for books. It was a catalyst for civic engagement. A fire department wasn't just about putting out fires. It was about neighbors taking responsibility for each other's well-being. A hospital wasn't just about medicine. It was a testament to a society's compassion. Through these efforts, Franklin was actively shaping a new American identity, one based on practicality, mutual respect, and the relentless pursuit of the public good. His vision expanded from a simple library to a comprehensive blueprint for a functional, humane, and enlightened society. And that's where we'll pause for today. Franklin's journey is far from over, and his influence is about to take on a national and even international dimension. What he built in Philadelphia would become a model for the entire nation. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're enjoying this exploration, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. See you next time. Hello history lovers, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating, often overlooked chapter of American history: the crucial role libraries played during the Revolutionary Era. It wasn't just muskets and militias that forged a new nation. It was ideas, and those ideas were housed, shared, and debated in the quiet halls of colonial libraries. So, grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's turn the page back to Chapter 13. The Library in the Revolution Era. When we picture the American Revolution, we often think of dramatic battlefields like Lexington and Concord, or the solemn signing of the Declaration of Independence. But the intellectual fire that ignited the flame of liberty was stoked in much quieter places. Long before the first shots were fired, a revolution of the mind was already underway, and colonial libraries were its epicenter. These weren't public libraries as we know them today. Many were subscription libraries, like the Library Company of Philadelphia, famously founded by Benjamin Franklin. For a small fee, members, merchants, artisans, lawyers, and politicians gained access to a world of knowledge that was previously reserved for the wealthy elite or clergy. Imagine being a colonist in the 1760s or 1770s. Tensions with Great Britain are rising. New taxes are imposed, and questions of rights, representation, and sovereignty are on everyone's lips. Where would you go to understand the arguments for and against independence? You'd go to the library. These collections were treasure troves of political philosophy, history, and law. They held the works of Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke, whose ideas on natural rights, life, liberty, and property became the very bedrock of the Declaration of Independence. They had Montesquieu, whose theories on the separation of powers would directly shape the U.S. Constitution. Think about it. These radical, world-changing ideas weren't just abstract concepts. They were accessible, bound in leather, sitting on a shelf, waiting to be read and discussed. The library became a neutral ground, a common space where colonists from different walks of life could engage with these powerful texts. A blacksmith could be reading the same pamphlet as a wealthy landowner. In the reading rooms, over shared books and newspapers, the colonists debated their future. They sharpened their arguments, challenged each other's assumptions, and began to forge a common American identity, distinct from their British rulers. This shared intellectual experience was absolutely vital. It transformed scattered grievances into a unified, principled movement for independence. Knowledge wasn't just power, it was the fuel for revolution. Now, let's talk about the big names. The Founding Fathers were, without a doubt, the library's most influential patrons. Thomas Jefferson, a voracious reader, amassed a personal library of thousands of volumes, which would later become the foundation for the new Library of Congress, after the original was burned by the British in 1814. Jefferson famously said, "I cannot live without books." And he meant it. When he was tasked with drafting the Declaration of Independence, he drew heavily upon the political philosophy he had studied for years, works by Locke, Sidney, and the Scottish Enlightenment thinkers, all found in colonial and personal libraries. Benjamin Franklin, the pioneer of the subscription library, used his library company as a hub for the intellectual and political life of Philadelphia. It was here that members of the Continental Congress would gather, not just for formal sessions, but for informal study and debate. They would check out books on ancient republics, on the history of failed confederacies, and on the principles of law to guide their monumental task of creating a new government. James Madison, the architect of the Constitution, spent months poring over historical and political texts, studying the successes and failures of past governments to design a republic that would endure. His deep research, enabled by access to extensive libraries, was critical to the thoughtful and deliberate structure of the Constitution we have today. John Adams, another prolific reader and writer, saw books as essential tools for study. His personal library was filled with his own notes and arguments scribbled in the margins. For these men, the library wasn't a luxury, it was an arsenal. It was where they armed themselves with the intellectual ammunition needed to argue for independence, to justify their rebellion to the world, and to build a new nation from the ground up. The words of Cicero, the histories of Tacitus, the philosophy of Locke, these were their weapons in the fight for freedom. The books they read provided the blueprint for democracy, giving them the historical context and philosophical grounding to imagine a government of the people. Beat people for the people. So, as the revolutionary fervor grew, so did the importance of these collections. The library wasn't just a passive repository of books. It was an active participant in the struggle for independence. The ideas circulating within its walls empowered ordinary people to question authority and to envision a different future. They learned that the rights they were fighting for were not new inventions, but were part of a long tradition of human thought on liberty and justice. This understanding gave the revolution its profound moral and intellectual weight. It wasn't just a tax revolt, it was a principled stand for the universal rights of mankind. In a very real sense, the American Revolution was born in a library. It was conceived in the minds of readers who, inspired by the collected wisdom of ages, dared to believe they could govern themselves. The ink on the pages of those books was just as important as the gunpowder in the barrels of their muskets. It demonstrates that access to information and the freedom to think, read, and debate are the cornerstones of any free society. The legacy of these revolutionary libraries is all around us. It lives on in our public library system, in our commitment to free speech, and in the very fabric of our democratic government. They remind us that a well-informed citizenry is the best defense of liberty. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It is incredible to think about how a simple room full of books could help change the course of history. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more hidden stories from history, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more content just like this. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our journey through the annals of American history. In our final chapter, we explore the enduring legacy of the Library Company of Philadelphia. A story that begins in 1731, but certainly doesn't end there. Imagine the scene. The smoke of the revolution is cleared, and a new nation is taking its first uncertain steps. What becomes of Benjamin Franklin's brainchild? This humble subscription library born from a dream of shared knowledge. Does it fade into obscurity like so many colonial relics? Not a chance. In fact, it does the exact opposite. The post-revolutionary era was a period of explosive growth and transformation for the United States, and the Library Company was right there, growing alongside it. It wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. Think of it as the intellectual heart of the newly independent nation. As Philadelphia solidified its role as the nation's temporary capital, the Library Company effectively became the first Library of Congress. When the delegates of the Constitutional Convention gathered in 1787 to hammer out the future of the country, where did they turn for reference, for legal precedent, for philosophical inspiration? They were granted full borrowing privileges at the Library Company. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, was a frequent visitor, poring over books on law, government, and history that would directly shape the document we live by today. The library wasn't just a building with books. It was an active participant in the creation of the American Republic. This period cemented the Library Company's reputation. It wasn't just a Philadelphia institution anymore. It was an American one. Its collection expanded rapidly, fueled by new members, generous donations, and an insatiable appetite for knowledge that defined the era. Books arrived from across the Atlantic, covering every conceivable subject: science, art, philosophy, politics, and literature. It became a beacon for scholars, statesmen, and everyday citizens eager to educate themselves and participate in the great experiment of self-government. The library was a physical manifestation of the Enlightenment ideal that an informed citizenry is the bedrock of a functioning democracy. This wasn't just about reading for pleasure. It was about reading for a purpose, for the betterment of oneself and the nation. As the 19th century dawned, the Library Company continued to evolve. It moved to a brand new building on 5th Street, right next to Independence Hall, a location that symbolized its central importance to the city and the country. This new home, with its impressive facade and statue of Franklin perched above the entrance, was a testament to how far the institution had come. It was no longer a small club of artisans and tradesmen. It was one of the largest, most respected public libraries in the entire New World. Its influence was immense. It set the standard for other libraries that began to spring up across the young nation, creating a network of knowledge that helped to unify a diverse and sprawling country. The Library Company's model of a subscription library, where members pooled their resources for the common good, was replicated from Boston to Charleston, spreading the light of learning far and wide. But what truly makes the Library Company a treasure today is not just its history, but its collection. It became a repository for the nation's memory. As the years passed, it didn't just acquire new books, it carefully preserved the old ones. It held on to the pamphlets that fueled the revolution, the personal letters of founding fathers, the scientific treatises that charted new discoveries, and the early novels that defined American literature. It understood long before others that these documents were not just paper and ink. They were priceless artifacts, tangible links to the past. This foresight is why, when you walk into the library company today, you are walking into a time capsule. Now, let's talk about what's inside. The collection is simply staggering. We're not just talking about old books. We're talking about foundational documents of Western and American culture. It holds one of the most significant collections of pre-1860 American imprints in existence. Imagine holding a first edition of a Phyllis Wheatley poem, or a political tract written and printed by Benjamin Franklin himself. The library possesses an extensive collection of early American men, including the papers of figures who shaped the course of history. These aren't just dry historical records. They are intimate glimpses into the lives, thoughts, and struggles of the people who built this nation. Among its most prized possessions are rare and unique items you simply cannot find anywhere else. It holds a vast collection of colonial-era documents, providing an unparalleled window into life before the Revolution. There are medical texts that show the evolution of science, architectural drawings that reveal how our cities were built, and personal diaries that give voice to the everyday experiences of men and women from centuries ago. One of its most famous holdings is the personal library of James Logan, a contemporary of Franklin and one of the most brilliant minds of his time. His collection of over 2,000 volumes, bequeathed to the city, is one of the cornerstones of the library company's research collections, filled with classical texts in their original languages. Today, the Library Company of Philadelphia stands as a world-renowned research institution. It's not a circulating library anymore in the way Franklin first envisioned, but its mission to foster knowledge remains unchanged. Scholars from around the globe come here to access its unique materials, to write the books that will teach the next generation about our history. It hosts exhibitions, lectures, and fellowships, ensuring that the legacy of 1731 is not just preserved, but is actively engaged with. It is a living, breathing institution, a direct link stretching from the leather-apron tradesmen of colonial Philadelphia to digiclad researchers of the 21st century. So, the legacy of 1731 is twofold. First, it's the powerful idea that access to information is a public good, essential for personal and societal progress. This concept, championed by Franklin and his junto, laid the groundwork for the entire American public library system we cherish today. Every time you check out a book from your local library, you are participating in a tradition that started in that small rented room in Philadelphia. Second, the legacy is the institution itself, a guardian of our collective memory. It protects the fragile pages that tell our story, ensuring that the voices of the past can still speak to us today, reminding us where we came from and challenging us to think about where we are going. It's a testament to the enduring power of a simple, revolutionary idea, that by sharing our knowledge, we can build a better world together. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible historical journey. Exploring the story of the library company has been a true privilege, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you found this series enlightening, please give this video a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, stay curious. Hello history lovers, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a story that truly shaped the mind of a nation. It's a tale about books, but more importantly, about access. This is Chapter 15. The Birth of Public Libraries in America. Imagine a time when books were a luxury, a treasure locked away for the wealthy and the privileged. If you wanted to read, you had to buy the book, which was expensive, or belonged to an exclusive club. This was the reality for most people in the early days of America. But an idea, a revolutionary spark, was about to change everything. This spark was ignited, in many ways, by Benjamin Franklin. We've talked about his Library Company of Philadelphia, a subscription library where members pooled their money to buy books. It was a brilliant model, but it still had a barrier. You had to pay to join. The true revolution was yet to come. How do you take an idea for the few and make it a right for all? The answer lay in a radical concept: using public funds, our tax money, to create institutions of learning open to everyone, regardless of their station in life. This transition from a private subscription model to a publicly funded, tax-supported system is the heart of our story. It wasn't an overnight change. It was a gradual, philosophical shift. The core belief driving this movement was that an educated citizenry is the bedrock of a healthy democracy. If people were to govern themselves, they needed access to information, to history, to new ideas. Knowledge couldn't be a privilege. It had to become a public right. The first city to truly embrace this ideal on a grand scale was Boston. In 1848, the city of Boston was authorized by the state of Massachusetts to levy a tax for the establishment and maintenance of a free public library. Think about that for a moment. The city was officially saying, "We believe access to books is so crucial. We're going to use tax dollars to make it happen for every single resident." This was groundbreaking. The Boston Public Library, which opened its doors to the public in 1854, became the shining example. The first large, free municipal library in the United States. It wasn't just a room with books. It was a statement. Its magnificent building was called a palace for the people, symbolizing that learning and culture were not just for the elite. They were for the common man, the immigrant, the child, the curious soul who just wanted to learn. The success in Boston created a ripple effect across the country. Other cities looked at this model and saw the future. New York City, a bustling metropolis of commerce and culture, was next to follow suit in a major way. While New York had various smaller libraries, like the Astor and Lenox libraries, they were consolidated in 1895, along with the Tilden Trust, to form the New York Public Library. This monumental effort, backed by both private philanthropy and city support, created one of the most iconic library systems in the world. The majestic lion statues, patience and fortitude, that guard the main branch on Fifth Avenue became symbols of the city's commitment to knowledge. From the Grand Reading Room in the Stephen A. Schwarzman Building to the smallest neighborhood branch, the New York Public Library system embodied the principle of free and open access for all. What was happening here? It was the democratization of knowledge on an unprecedented scale. Before, your access to information was largely determined by your wealth. If you were a poor farmer, a factory worker, or a new immigrant, the vast world of literature, science, and philosophy was largely closed off to you. Public libraries changed that. Suddenly, anyone could walk in off the street and read the same books as a university professor or a wealthy merchant. They could learn a new trade, study a foreign language, or simply get lost in a great novel. The library became the great equalizer. It was a place where your ambition and your curiosity mattered more than the money in your pocket. It was a testament to the American ideal that everyone deserves a chance to improve themselves and their circumstances. This movement wasn't just confined to big cities. The idea spread to towns and villages across the nation. Philanthropists like Andrew Carnegie played a colossal role, funding the construction of over 1,600 public libraries in the United States alone. His belief was that a library was one of the best tools for self-improvement. He would provide the building, but he required the local town to stock it with books and maintain it with public funds, ensuring community ownership and long-term sustainability. These Carnegie libraries became cornerstones of their communities. They were often the most beautiful buildings in town, a source of civic pride. More than that, they were vibrant centers of community life. They were a place for children's story hours, for public lectures, for new Americans to learn English, and for people of all ages to gather and connect. The birth of the public library system fundamentally altered the American landscape. It fueled innovation, supported education, and empowered generations of citizens. It declared that knowledge was not a commodity to be bought and sold, but a public good, a shared resource essential for the prosperity and well-being of the nation. It was a physical manifestation of the pursuit of happiness, offering everyone the tools to build a better life for themselves. So, the next time you walk into your local public library, take a moment to appreciate the revolutionary idea it represents. It's more than just a building full of books. It's a legacy of the belief that everyone, and I mean everyone, has a right to knowledge. It's a testament to the idea that an informed public is a free public. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more explorations into the ideas that shaped our world. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series exploring the lives of history's most fascinating figures. Today, we arrive at the final chapter of our journey with Benjamin Franklin, and we're asking a big question. What is his true legacy? When you hear the name Benjamin Franklin, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For many, it's a kite, a key, and a lightning storm. And while that's an iconic image, to stop there would be like judging a vast library by the cover of a single book. The lightning rod was just one spark from a mind that was constantly ablaze with curiosity and a desire to improve the world. Let's step back and look at the sheer breadth of his influence. We're talking about a man who was a world-renowned scientist, a prolific inventor, a master diplomat, a pioneering publisher, and a passionate advocate for education and civic improvement. He didn't just excel in one field. He reshaped every field he entered. Think about it. In the world of science, his experiments with electricity fundamentally changed our understanding of the natural world. He didn't just prove lightning was electricity, he tamed it, creating the lightning rod to protect homes and buildings. A practical invention that saved countless lives and properties. This wasn't abstract science. It was science and service of humanity. But his inventive mind didn't stop there. Are you wearing glasses right now? If they're bifocals, you have Franklin to thank. He invented them simply because he was tired of switching between two pairs of glasses for reading and for seeing at a distance. He saw a problem and engineered an elegant solution. What about staying warm in the winter? The Franklin stove was a revolutionary invention, a metal-lined fireplace that radiated more heat and used less wood than a traditional open hearth. Again, he saw a common problem in efficient and smoky fireplaces and applied his scientific knowledge to create a practical, life-improving device. And here's the most remarkable part. He never patented most of his inventions, including the lightning rod and bifocals. He believed that these creations should be freely available to benefit everyone. In his autobiography, he wrote, "As we enjoy great advantages from the inventions of others, we should be glad of an opportunity to serve others by any invention of ours." That spirit of generosity and public service is a cornerstone of his character. Now let's shift our focus from science and invention to the world of politics and diplomacy. As the American colonies rumbled with revolutionary fervor, Franklin was not on the sidelines. He was a central player, a founding father whose wisdom and wit were as crucial as any soldier's musket. He was one of the 5 drafters of the Declaration of Independence, lending his sharp intellect and editorial skills to Thomas Jefferson's powerful words. His signature on that document was a bold act of defiance against the most powerful empire in the world. But perhaps his greatest diplomatic achievement came during the Revolutionary War. As the American ambassador to France, Franklin's task was monumental. Convince the French monarchy to support a fledgling republic's fight for independence. This was no easy feat. He arrived in Paris as a quasi-celebrity, the embodiment of the rustic and enlightened American. The French were captivated by his intellect, his charm, and even his simple fur cap, which stood in stark contrast to the powdered wigs of the French court. He masterfully navigated the complex world of European diplomacy, using his wit and reputation to build relationships and secure the critical alliance with France. That alliance, which provided military and financial support, was arguably the single most important factor in America's victory. Without Franklin's diplomatic genius in Paris, the outcome of the war could have been very different. He didn't just help declare independence. E secure Italiano. And even after the war, he was there, helping to negotiate the Treaty of Paris, which officially recognized the United States as a sovereign nation. He was present at the nation's birth, its struggle for survival, and its formal acceptance onto the world stage. Beyond the grand arenas of science and statecraft, Franklin's influence is deeply woven into the fabric of everyday American society. He was, in many ways, the architect of the American civic spirit. He believed that ordinary citizens could and should work together to improve their communities. Look at the institutions he helped create. He founded the first lending library in America, the Library Company of Philadelphia. based on the simple but powerful idea that access to knowledge should be widespread, not confined to the wealthy elite. This was a radical concept at the time, and it laid the groundwork for the public library system we cherish today. He was also instrumental in establishing the University of Pennsylvania, envisioning an institution that would provide practical education for the rising merchant class, focusing on real-world skills rather than just classical studies. He organized Philadelphia's first volunteer fire department, the Union Fire Company, transforming firefighting from a chaotic scramble into an organized, community-based effort. He even helped improve the postal service, serving as the first postmaster general and creating a more efficient and reliable system of communication, from public libraries to universities, from fire departments to postal routes. Franklin's fingerprints are all over the essential services that form the backbone of a functioning society. He was a community organizer before the term even existed, a man who saw need and immediately began thinking, how can we, together, fix this? So, when we try to sum up Benjamin Franklin's legacy, it's clear that it's so much more than any single invention or political act. His true legacy is the very spirit of the Enlightenment itself, brought to life. The Enlightenment was an intellectual and philosophical movement that emphasized reason, individualism, and a skeptical approach to tradition. Franklin was the living, breathing embodiment of these ideals. He believed in the power of human reason to understand and improve the world. He championed the idea that knowledge should be pursued and shared for the betterment of all. He demonstrated that a single individual, through hard work, ingenuity, and a commitment to public service, could make a profound and lasting impact. He wasn't born into aristocracy. It was a self-made man, the son of a candlemaker who, through relentless self-improvement and an insatiable curiosity, rose to become one of the most respected figures in the world. He represents the American ideal of social mobility and the belief that your circumstances at birth do not define your potential. His life story is a testament to the power of education, civic engagement, and a practical problem-solving mindset. The lightning rod is a perfect metaphor for his entire life's work. He saw a dangerous, mysterious force of nature, studied it with reason and logic, and then created a tool to harness it for the protection and benefit of humanity. He did the same thing in society, tackling ignorance with education, chaos with organization, and tyranny with the principles of liberty and self-governance. In the end, Benjamin Franklin's enduring influence isn't just in the things he left behind, but in the mindset he championed. It's a legacy of curiosity, ingenuity, and a deep-seated belief in progress. It's a call to action for each of us to look at the world around us, identify its problems, and ask that most Franklin-esque of questions. What can I do to make things better? His life teaches us that the pursuit of knowledge, when combined with the spirit of public service, is one of the most powerful forces for good in the world. He was more than a founding father. He was a founding visionary for a better, brighter, and more enlightened world. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the incredible life of Benjamin Franklin. I hope it's given you a new appreciation for the man behind the myths. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more stories from history, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to create this content for you. We'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the incredible legacy of Benjamin Franklin. In our previous episodes, we traced the origins and early growth of the Library Company of Philadelphia. Today, we're jumping forward to the present to see what has become of Franklin's brilliant idea. It's a story that's just as inspiring as its beginning. So, what happened to that small subscription library started by a group of ambitious tradesmen back in 1731? Well, I'm thrilled to tell you that it is not just a footnote in a history book. The Library Company of Philadelphia is very much alive and well. If you ever find yourself walking through the historic streets of Philadelphia, you can still visit it. It stands proudly, not just as a building, but as a living, breathing institution. From its humble beginnings in a rented room, it has grown and evolved. But its core mission to foster knowledge and community remains unchanged. It's a direct, unbroken link to the intellectual world of Franklin and his contemporaries. Think about that for a moment. An institution nearly 300 years old, still serving the public. It's a powerful testament to the durability of a great idea. But what exactly is the library company today? It's no longer the lending library it once was, where members could check out the latest books. Over the centuries, its role has shifted. Today, the library company is one of America's most important independent research libraries. It's a treasure chest for historians, scholars, students, and anyone with a passion for American history and culture. Its purpose has matured, transforming from a source of general reading for its members into a guardian of the nation's printed heritage. So, if you can't borrow books to take home, what do you find inside? You find something far more precious. The library company houses an astonishing collection of over 500,000 rare books, manuscripts, pamphlets, prints, and photographs. We're talking about items that are literally irreplaceable. These aren't just old books on a shelf. They are artifacts that tell the story of America. The collection is particularly strong in American history and culture from the 17th through the 19th centuries. Imagine holding a book that Benjamin Franklin himself might have held. The collection includes a significant portion of Franklin's personal library. It's a mind-boggling thought, isn't it? You can physically connect with the past in a way that's simply not possible anywhere else. The library also holds first editions of monumental works, like a copy of Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica, that Franklin himself acquired for the collection. It's a place where the history of science, politics, and literature converge. The collections go far beyond just famous names. They document the lives of everyday people, too. You can find early American cookbooks, trade catalogs, and personal diaries. These materials provide a rich, detailed picture of what life was like in centuries past. For example, the library company has an extensive collection related to African American history, including abolitionist pamphlets and materials from the early black press. It's a vital resource for understanding the complexities and diverse voices of American history. Scholars from all over the world come here to conduct their research. They might be working on a biography of a founding father, a study of early American art, or an analysis of the women's suffrage movement. The library company provides them with the primary source materials they need to uncover new insights and tell new stories about our past. It functions as a laboratory for the humanities, where new knowledge is constantly being generated. The institution also supports this research through fellowships, bringing in a new cohort of scholars each year to dive deep into its collections. But it's not just for professional academics. The library company is deeply committed to public engagement. It hosts a wide range of exhibitions, lectures, and public programs that bring its incredible collections to life for everyone. You might walk in and find an exhibition on the history of medicine in Philadelphia, or another on the art of political cartoons in the 19th century. These exhibitions are meticulously curated, using rare materials from the vaults to tell fascinating stories in an accessible and visually engaging way. These events make history tangible and exciting. The lectures often feature prominent historians and authors sharing their latest research. It's a continuation of the spirit of the Junto Franklin's original discussion group, where ideas were shared and debated for the betterment of all. The library company ensures that the knowledge contained within its walls doesn't stay locked away, but is shared widely with the community it has served for centuries. It's a place of active learning, not just passive storage. Let's talk about the building itself. Located on Locust Street, just a short walk from many of Philadelphia's other historic sites, the current building was constructed in the 1960s. But it's designed in a classical style that pays homage to its own history. And perched outside is a wonderful statue of Benjamin Franklin in a Roman toga, a copy of an original that once graced an earlier library building. It's a whimsical and fitting tribute to a man who saw knowledge as a timeless, classical virtue. When you step inside, you enter a space that feels both grand and welcoming. There are quiet reading rooms where researchers pore over fragile documents, and beautiful galleries where the public can explore the latest exhibition. The staff are incredibly knowledgeable and passionate, acting as guides to this vast sea of information. They are the modern-day keepers of Franklin's flame, dedicated to preserving these treasures and helping others unlock the stories they hold. The library company is a powerful symbol. In an age of digital information and fleeting online content, it represents the enduring value of the physical book, the original document, the tangible artifact. It reminds us that history is not just an abstract concept, but something we can touch, see, and read in the very same form that people did hundreds of years ago. It's an anchor to our collective past. Ultimately, the Library Company of Philadelphia today is the living, breathing embodiment of Benjamin Franklin's dream. He envisioned a place where knowledge could be pooled and shared for the common good. He believed that an informed citizenry was essential for a healthy society. What started as a practical solution for a few artisans wanting access to more books has blossomed into a world-renowned cultural institution that preserves the DNA of American thought and culture. It has survived wars, economic depressions, and vast social and technological changes. Through it all, it has held fast to its purpose. It is a quiet giant in the cultural landscape of America, a testament to the power of a simple but profound idea, that we are all better off when we have access to knowledge and a space to share it. So, if you ever have the chance, I highly recommend visiting. Go see an exhibition, attend a lecture, or simply stand outside and appreciate this magnificent institution. It's more than just a library. It's a monument to curiosity, collaboration, and the timeless pursuit of knowledge that Benjamin Franklin championed his entire life. It's his legacy, and it's a legacy that belongs to all of us. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of the Library Company. I hope you've found it as fascinating as I have. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And do you want to forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do want to miss our future explorations into history? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we wrapping up our deep dive with a look at something truly fascinating. How the lessons from a figure like Benjamin Franklin are not just history, but are incredibly relevant to our lives right now in the digital age. It's Chapter 18. Lessons for the Modern World. Let's get into it. Think about how you get information today. You have a question. You pull out your phone, and in seconds, you're on a search engine. Maybe landing on Wikipedia. You're tapping into a vast, shared pool of human knowledge. It feels so modern, so quintessentially 21st century, right? But what if I told you the philosophical seeds of this were planted nearly 300 years ago? That's where Franklin comes in. He was a pioneer of the idea that knowledge shouldn't be a secret hoarded by the elite. It should be shared, debated, and built upon by a community. His Junto Club wasn't just a social gathering. It was an early form of a collaborative network. Members brought questions, shared their learning, and collectively grew smarter. Sound familiar? It's like an analog version of a Reddit forum or a Quora thread. The most powerful example of this philosophy in action was his creation of the first subscription library in America. Before Franklin, books were a luxury. If you wanted to learn, you had to be wealthy enough to buy them. Franklin's library changed the game. For a small subscription fee, ordinary tradesmen, clerks, and citizens could access a world of information that was previously locked away. It was revolutionary. He essentially democratized knowledge. Now, fast forward to today. What is Wikipedia, if not the ultimate evolution of Franklin's library? It's a global, digital library, built and maintained by a community of volunteers, and accessible to anyone with an internet connection for free. The core principle is identical. Knowledge is a public good, a shared resource that empowers everyone. When Franklin established his library, he was building a physical network for sharing information. Today, the internet is our network, but the spirit of shared knowledge, of open access, is a direct descendant of Franklin's vision. He anticipated the culture of the internet long before a single line of code was written. This idea extends beyond just encyclopedias. Think about open-source software, Creative Commons licenses, and online learning platforms like Coursera or Khan Academy. All these modern marvels operate on the Franklin-esque principle that when we share our ideas and tools freely, the entire community benefits. Innovation accelerates, new discoveries are made, and society as a whole moves forward. Franklin knew that progress wasn't a zero-sum game. One person's gain in knowledge didn't mean another person's loss. In fact, it was the opposite. The more people who were educated and informed, the more prosperous and robust the entire community would become. So, what's the big takeaway for us? It's the timeless, and perhaps now more important than ever, value of curiosity and lifelong learning. Franklin was never satisfied with what he knew. He was always asking questions, experimenting, reading, and engaging with the world around him. He didn't see learning as something that stopped when you finished school. For him, it was a lifelong pursuit, a daily habit. He was curious about everything, from the nature of electricity to improving the design of a street lamp. This insatiable curiosity is a mindset we can all cultivate. In an age of information overload, it's easy to become passive consumers of content, endlessly scrolling through feeds. Franklin's model challenges us to be active participants. It encourages us to ask why, to dive deeper than the headline, to learn a new skill, to read a book on a topic we know nothing about, or even to contribute our own knowledge back into the digital commons. His life teaches us that the desire to learn is one of the most powerful engines for personal and societal growth. It's not about becoming a genius inventor. It's about staying engaged, staying curious, and believing in the power of shared ideas. It's about recognizing that the tools we have at our fingertips, the internet, global connectivity, instant access to information are the fulfillment of a dream that began centuries ago in a small club in Philadelphia. Franklin's legacy isn't just in the lightning rod or the bifocals. It's in the very fabric of our modern, interconnected world. It's in every library, every open source project, and every click that leads to a new discovery. On Wikipedia, he showed us that building a better future starts with the simple, profound act of sharing what we know and never, ever stop being curious. So the next time you look something up online, take a moment to appreciate the centuries-old idea you're participating in. You're standing on the shoulders of giants, and Benjamin Franklin is one of the tallest. Let's honor that legacy by continuing to learn, to share, and to build a more informed world together. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope you found it as inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our future explorations. Let me know in the comments what lesson from Franklin resonates most with you. Until next time, stay curious. Friends, we've journeyed together through the remarkable life of a man who was more than just a founding father. He was a scientist, an inventor, a diplomat, a writer, and above all, a beacon of knowledge. As we reach the final chapter of our story on Benjamin Franklin, let us take a moment to reflect on the enduring power of his greatest contribution. The light of knowledge itself. Imagine a world where books were a luxury, locked away in private libraries, accessible only to the wealthy and the privileged. For the common person, the vast universe of ideas, history, and science was a distant, unreachable star. This was the world Benjamin Franklin was born into, but it wasn't a world he was content to leave behind. Franklin understood a profound truth. A single idea, once shared, can ignite a revolution in the mind. It can travel across oceans and through generations, growing stronger with each person it touches. He saw knowledge not as a treasure to be hoarded, but as a flame to be passed from one candle to another, illuminating the darkness for all. Think about the Junto, that small club of tradesmen meeting in a humble Philadelphia tavern. It wasn't just a social gathering. It was a crucible of ideas. They debated philosophy, discussed the latest scientific discoveries, and shared their knowledge freely. From this small spark grew a roaring fire. The Library Company of Philadelphia, the very first subscription library in America. Suddenly, the carpenter, the blacksmith, the shopkeeper, they all had access to the same books as the gentleman scholar. They could read about Roman history, Newtonian physics, and political theory. This wasn't just about reading. It was about empowerment. It was about giving everyday people the tools to think for themselves, to question authority, and to dream of a better world. In a world that once kept books behind locked doors, Franklin gave us the keys. This single act transformed the American landscape. It cultivated a more informed citizenry, capable of participating in the great and terrifying experiment of self-governance. How could people rule themselves if they couldn't access the wisdom of the ages? Franklin's libraries were the bedrock upon which American democracy was built, but his mission didn't stop at the library door. Consider the lightning rod. It wasn't just a clever invention to protect buildings from storms. It was a triumph of reason over superstition. For centuries, lightning was seen as an act of divine anger, an unknowable and terrifying force. Franklin, with his kite and key, dared to study it. He brought it down to earth, explained it, and tamed it. He showed the world that nature, even at its most fearsome, operated on principles that could be understood. He replaced fear with curiosity, and superstition with science. He taught us that we are not merely at the mercy of the universe. We are active participants in it, capable of observing, learning, and improving our own condition. This shift in perspective is the very essence of the Enlightenment, and Franklin was its most practical and cheerful champion. He applied this same principle to everything. His Pennsylvania fireplace warmed homes more efficiently, saving precious fuel. His bifocal glasses helped people see both near and far. A beautiful metaphor for his own life, always focused on the practical detail, yet never losing sight of the grand vision. He never patented these inventions. Why? Because he believed they belonged to everyone. They were contributions to the collective well-being of humanity. This spirit of sharing, of public service, is perhaps his most important legacy. He saw himself as a citizen of the world, and his work was dedicated to its improvement. When he served as a diplomat in France, he wasn't just representing America. He was representing the idea of American nation founded on liberty, reason, and the pursuit of knowledge. He charmed a king and an entire nation, not with aristocratic airs, but with his wit, his wisdom, and his genuine belief in the power of human potential. As we look around our world today, a world connected by an invisible web of information that would have astounded even a visionary like Franklin, we are living in the house he helped build. Every time we check a book out of a public library, we are walking through a door he opened. Every time we Google a question, we are engaging in the kind of open inquiry he championed. The spirit of the Junto lives on in every online forum, every classroom discussion, and every late-night conversation with friends about how to make the world a better place. But his legacy also comes with a responsibility. Knowledge is more accessible now than ever before, but it is also more fragile. It competes with misinformation and noise. The light of knowledge Franklin worked so hard to spread requires constant tending. It requires us to be curious, to be critical thinkers, and, most importantly, to be willing to share what we learn. We must ask ourselves the same questions Franklin and his friends asked in their little club. How can we improve ourselves and our community? How can we contribute to the public good? His life serves as a timeless reminder that one person, armed with curiosity, a generous spirit, and a belief in the power of ideas, can indeed change the world. So the next time you pick up a book, or learn a new skill, or share a fascinating fact with a friend, take a moment to remember Benjamin Franklin. Remember the man who flew a kite in a storm, not just to prove a point, but to illuminate the world. The light he lit over 2 centuries ago continues to shine, a guiding star for all who believe that a better future is not just something to be hoped for, but something to be built, one idea at a time. He proved that the most powerful force on earth isn't wealth or status, but a well-informed mind and a generous heart. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. If you've enjoyed this exploration, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this. Your support helps us keep the light of knowledge burning bright for everyone. Until next time, stay curious. And so, we reach the end of our journey together, but not the end of the story. The tale of Benjamin Franklin isn't a dusty relic to be placed on a shelf. It's a living, breathing blueprint for a life of purpose, curiosity, and relentless self-improvement. We've walked the cobblestone streets of colonial Boston and Philadelphia, stood in the hallowed halls of London and Paris, and witnessed a mind at work that reshaped the world. From the runaway apprentice with pockets full of hope to the elder statesman revered by nations, Franklin's life was a testament to the power of human potential. He taught us that our circumstances do not define our destiny. With a curious mind and a determined spirit, we can become the architects of our own lives, and in doing so, contribute to the grand design of a better world for all. Think about the sheer breadth of his influence. In science, he didn't just fly a kite. He tamed lightning, charted ocean currents, and gave us a new language to understand the fundamental forces of electricity. His inventions weren't for profit, but for public good bifocals. The Franklin stove, the flexible urinary catheter each, a solution to a real-world problem, born from empathy and a desire to alleviate suffering and improve daily life. In the civic sphere, he was the ultimate community organizer. The library, the fire department, the university, the hospital. These pillars of modern society were, in many ways, born from his Junto Club, a simple gathering of minds dedicated to mutual improvement and civic virtue. He showed us that progress isn't handed down from on high. It's built from the ground up by ordinary citizens who decide to take responsibility for their community. As a statesman and diplomat, his contributions were nothing short of monumental. He was the only founding father to sign all 4 key documents of the American founding: the Declaration of Independence, the Treaty of Alliance with France, the Treaty of Paris, and the U.S. Constitution. His wisdom, wit, and diplomatic finesse in the courts of Europe secured the vital support that turned the tide of the Revolutionary War. He wasn't just a founder of a nation. He was its most charming and effective advocate on the world stage. But perhaps his most enduring legacy is the one he left for us as individuals. Through his autobiography, he gave us a guide to personal growth, a system for cultivating virtues and eradicating vices. He wasn't a saint. He was a man keenly